Hello and welcome to CharIN Testivals, the why, what, and how of EV interop testing events. Really excited to have you all here today and appreciate you joining us as we go through all of the things that we do at CharIN that help support your experiences in the field for both electric vehicles and electric vehicle supply equipment. So first, we wanted to quickly run through the agenda, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. First, I'll give a short overview of CharIN and the Testival events in North America, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Jeremy Schofield from CharIN Academy, who will discuss the goals of the Testival. Then we'll have Sven Groening from Keysight give us a short overview of what to expect at the Testival and how to prepare. Sam Thurston from Argonne National Lab will give us an overview from ChargeX on the prescribed testing that we'll be making available at our next event in November. Then we'll have testimonials from past testers on how they prepare for the event, as well as what they do with the information following the event. I'm really pleased to have Nicole Starr and Gwen from ABB and BMW joining us to provide that perspective. So real quick, who is CharIN and what are Testivals? So CharIN is one of the leading nonprofit trade associations in the electric vehicle charging space globally. Our mission is CO2 neutral mobility. So what does that mean? That means we are empowering the next level of green mobility and energy through the use of CO2 neutral energy production combined with battery electrification. And this is not just for on-road vehicles. This includes all different applications, including things like flight, off-road, like shipping, as well as maritime and rail. Could include basically anything that could be electrified. CharIN promotes our mission through the standards, as well as ensuring interoperability of those standards and conformance to standards. We do this through educational events, including things like conferences and roundtables. We also help broaden the tent for collaboration in the industry by supporting as a platform for focus groups that we host and support. We also do special projects, and we have a wide array of partners around the industry. And then finally, we make sure that we are actually giving folks opportunities to test through things like our Testival events, which we are discussing here today. Where is CharIN? So we are all over the world. As you can see, we have offices in almost every geography. We have grown from 2015 from about 12 members to about 330 members today. And we represent all different parts of the charging infrastructure community, both those who are directly involved as well as supporting and indirectly involved. So what do we do at the CharIN Testival? So we are focused around interoperability testing. We have provided conformance and interoperability tests for electric vehicles and charging infrastructure, as well as controller testing. And we allow opportunities for networking with peers through, as well as international technology experts. We host these festivals all over the world. We have 2 a year in North America, 3 planned next year in Europe, and then 2 planned in Asia. So stay tuned for opportunities for other testing if you'd like to test outside of the North America geography. And we have all that information on our website at charin.global. Here's a few pictures from past events that we've hosted. And we really do find that this is a great opportunity for you not only to get access to testing, but also to meet with your peers who are experiencing perhaps some of the same challenges you are, and getting a way to accelerate and quickly move past some of those challenges. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jeremy Schofield, who will give now an update about the goals of the Testival.
Thank you, Erica. And hopefully everybody now has a better understanding of exactly who CharIN is and what the Testivals are. And I'll explain to you what are really the goals of the Testivals and the the vision for the Testivals in the future. So as you all read in the press or hear from other companies, there is an interoperability issue in the market. A lot of people refer to it as a reliability issue as well. And what is really causing that? As we know, there are many different kinds of vehicles, many different kinds of charging stations, and those need to all be able to communicate with each other. And there are various different standards around the world that are used to regulate that communication that happens, be it an SAE standard, an ISO standard, an IEC standard, an IEEE standard. There are many different standards that are out there that really regulate this communication that takes place between the charger and the vehicle. Next slide, please. And so what happens if that communication, this interoperability, is not given? We have thousands of different models of vehicles, thousands of different EVSE models around the world. And if they can't communicate with each other, then we have unexpected start failures. We have charging stopping, sporadic charging stopping. We have the inability to unplug the vehicle at the end of the charging. So there are lots of different things that can happen if the two parties don't communicate with each other, which all leads to a longer charging time, uncomfortable experience, and potentially the overall failure of charging. And so what is it that we do at the Testivals? If we go to the next slide, what we try to do is to increase that interoperability between the various different models of vehicles and chargers. And we do it through having these 6 different types of tests. So we test the different communications protocols. We even get into the end-to-end plug and charge, so smart charging capabilities. We also are starting now to do bidirectional charging, as well as security testing. And we do that not only for CCS, but also MCS and NACS, or NACS, the new J3400 standard in North America. And so our Testivals are really there to help with all of the different types of charging needs and use cases that people have. The basic charging, the more advanced charging with the smart features, as well as other add-on options like vehicle to grid, automatic connection devices, and even wireless charging. So, but where are we going from there? We can see, if on the next slide, that as I mentioned, there are thousands of different types of vehicles on the market now, as well as different chargers on the market, and just offering these interoperability testing at our Testivals is not feasible with the growing market. Yeah, because we need to invite then or have the different manufacturers of these vehicles and chargers to come together at these events. And as we have more and more models on the market, that isn't possible. So what we are trying to do from CharIN is make sure that everybody is compliant and conforms with the standards, so that if you test against a certified testing system, which is also available at these Testivals or at various different labs that we have, then you can be certain that if your vehicle or your charger is conformant with the overall standard, then you can be certain that if a vehicle connects to you or you connect to a charger, you will be able to charge, and it will be interoperable. So that's really where we're going. Rather than these ad hoc interoperability testing of one vehicle to one charger, we want to make sure that everybody is conformant with the overall standard and the norm. And so if we move to the next slide, our overall goal is really to guarantee that minimum requirement of so-called CCS products for charging interoperability. So by having this impartial process of creating, which quality, which monitoring, which standard needs to be adhered to, and having a transparent selection of test houses, as well as the various different companies that make these test systems, we want to make it easy for all manufacturers of vehicles and chargers to be able to test their products versus the standard either themselves with a testing device or go to a third-party testing house and make sure that they are then makes them then overall interoperable. And we learn from all of these testables exactly which test cases are the most important to test against and will really increase the interoperability the most. So that's really our goal of the testable, is to increase the interoperability. And now I'll hand over to Sven, who will talk about exactly how we run the testables and create the pairs.
Thanks, Jeremy, for handing over. Erika, if you can go to the next slide, please. So I think the interoperability is most important, but you also have heard from Jeremy that conformance is most important. So both in case are really the core parts for the market. How do we achieve that within the testable? So we have here on the left side, we have various implementation of the EVs. On the right side, we have various implementation of the charging stations. And we want to test them on these events against each other to check the interoperability. So if both implementation that are from the same standards derived are interoperable, but also to check those conformance tests, how they behave, and if there are any things we can improve. And this is why we want to, let's say, if you can click one more time, we want to validate if those implementation are already correct and conform to the standard, but also if you click next time, we need this feedback from various implementations from the developers. This is important that we also have the technical developers on site, and we want to really collect those feedback to bring this back to the standards, back to CharIN, to the focus group to discuss what can we improve over time to make both the requirements more adequate, but also the test cases that we are executing, which builds a baseline for interoperability with the conformance test, that they're gaining more quality over time. So how does we achieve that from the process? If you can click to the next slide, please. We try to achieve that in a round-robin fashion. So we have, as I said, charging stations on site. Here in the picture, we have them in the middle. And we have a fleet of EVs, could also be heavy-duty vehicles, and conformance test systems. And then we do this kind of round-robin fashion, so that we say if EV starts at station A, for example, the next step after the test is done, maybe after if you can click on next step, after 90 minutes, I think something is broken here, but it will move then to the next location, which is then in this case, number X, and then from number 2, we can move over to number B, and if you can click on the next one again, so we really can, let's say, shift around the circle one after each other. So after every 90 minutes, we call this then testing time slot. So that in the best case, every charging station that are on site in any test system and EV could test which is other. However, it's limited to the overall time of the testable, which is mostly 2.5 days, so that not all of them are possible. And this is why we try to optimize it. If you can go to the next slide, we will collect then the technical details of the various implementations. So first we need to know, is it an EV implementation, it's a test system, or it's a charging station? Then also if there are any preferred companies they want to test with, because it was not maybe tested quite often and, before the event. Then more technical details, is this an AC or DC system? What kind of protocols are implemented? Is plug and charge implemented or not with TLS? Which version of the TLS? If -20 is implemented, do we have already dynamic or scheduled mode for charging and or discharging? All this kind of information we collect from every participant and try to optimize this circling, that we really try to optimize also the pattern that most of the -20 tests could also be executed, or plug and charge. That was in the previous days only limited implementation of plug and charge. It is luckily extended right now, but now it's -20. So we try to optimize the test partners with -20, and also if there are any preferred testing companies. That overall then results in a schedule. If you can go to the next slide, please. We have then two types of pairings. One is the scheduled pairing, which we normally have about 7 predefined test pairings, test slots for this 2.5-day event, so that we say, okay, based on all these parameters, all these constraints we have, we try to optimize it in a way that we predefine this pairing, so that after every 90 minutes we change the vehicles to the next charging station and optimize this prepared pairing, let's say, for these 7 test slots. But in addition, we also have then mostly on the last day, half day, 3 more test slots, for example, where we use this dynamic pairing, so that the participants on site can negotiate if they want to test again, if they need to want to test again, or if they want to test with others. This pairing have not been scheduled because of the overall time. It's not possible to have all different combinations. So if there's any need to test with specific companies, they can negotiate by themselves. And there's a tool then available on site, so that everybody really can also organize additional testing pairings for the last day. Because the previous one, as I mentioned, is then based on the constraints on the technical level, but also on the prepared test partners. If you can go to the next slide. How can you prepare? So most questions is, what are the grid connection? What can we prepare from our side? What do we need to prepare? Here we need to decide between North American, European test events, but also Asian test events. For, I think, US, it's more complicated. If you maybe can click 3 more times, we have here the 480 volt connections. We have the 208 volt connections, and we have also, one more time, please, the 220 or 240 volt connections. So we see we have different grid opportunities, and from the experience in the past, it's really good to have a prepared plug and receptacles on site, then provided by the host, which could change over time, different locations. But we previously then check with the host what is available and also make some kind of recommendations. And this is some technical information we normally share upfront to the test events, so that all participants with charging stations and test systems can prepare the grid connections. For the European version, if you can click 1 more time, it's more easily. There's only 1 connection, but in principle, it's mostly the same, that we have also a prepared plug on all the different chargers and test systems that is easily connect on site. And if we have the case, for example, that we have heavy duty vehicles that we maybe not can easily move from one location to another because of the overall space that we have available, sometimes it's then easier to move the charging station, and then it's quite easy if you have a plugged system that you can disconnect easily and replug it in. You may also have recognized that we have a limited current here. This is also why the scope is mostly not on high power charging. It's more on the communication. So most of the issues that have been identified is more on the signal level and the communication level. It's not that much that the high power current then could not be reached on real systems. It's more on the protocol, and this is why we not require full edge grid connection for all the systems, and high power charging is mostly not in interest of this event. If you can go to the next slide. The other things, oh, I think that should not be animated, so maybe click through it. We have 3 options for plug-in charge. So if you want to prepare for plug-in charge testing, we have one Testival PNC ecosystem, which provides the backend system, the CPMS, the charge point management system, that the chargers can connect through with OCPP. So all that as a normal operation, this can be then prepared by onboarding process from the charging station side, but also from the EV perspective, from the OEM side, so that are already prepared for the event. So when you arrive to the event, you already have then the interface to the backend system, or if that for whatever reason is not possible, we also have a fallback option, the offline PKI, so that all the files, the certificates that are available for plug-in charge are prepared file-based for download, so that you can integrate this into the system. In the last two events, we also have extended another part for plug-in charge testing, which we call multiple V2G PKI testing. So that next to one testing PKI, which is used to the complete round-robin fashion, so within the circling, all the PKI is the same, but only for one specific solution, for one specific space, we then say, okay, in this specific part, you can test with various PKIs. So there will be then multiple charging stations prepared with different PKIs. And if the EV is then moving to this location during the normal round robin, the EV should also be prepared by the onboarding process. But in this specific time frame, 90 minutes, it can use the time half or quarter to it, or how many PKIs we have, to test with different implementations of PKIs, so that if for example, TLS is working with different routes that are installed on the EVs, and if they are also available, that the certificate is available for the contract, then also, of course, normal authentication for plug-in charge or even installation could be tested. Depends a little bit on the capabilities of that charging stations and the multi-PKI providers that are then on site of the on the event, and which kind of opportunities are available. But in principle, it's really important to know that plug-in charge is part of those events. It's in focus. It will be prepared by an onboarding process, and that also the backend system, so a kind of end-to-end test, could also be then executed for plug-in charge. Okay, I think that's it from my side. I would then hand over to Sam.
Thank you, Sven. Hello, everyone. Sam Thurston from Argonne National Lab, here representing the ChargeX consortium to talk a little bit about our upcoming plans for the November Testival. Those unaware, ChargeX consortium is a lab-led effort that was started in April 2022. We've been running for 2 years now, tackling EV charging, interoperability, reliability issues. And so one of our legs of that, the consortium, is having involvement in testing, looking at a previous involvement, starting with the June 2024 CharIN event. The ChargeX consortium had a presence at this previous event. We put together a prescribed test program. During the previous event, we had 22 out of the 36 testers opt in to this program. Of course, this is optional, and it's only for a portion of the testing time. So typically, these are 90-minute testing slots. There are 10 testing slots in total. The last 3 are usually kept for dynamic testing on the final day, so we only utilize the first 2 days of testing. At the last June event, we used 30 minutes for prescribed testing. There were 8 test scenarios, a ChargeX moderator present to facilitate the test plan, answer any questions, record results. And of course, what is the incentive of doing this? There is a monetary $2,000 rebate for participating. The way that testers could opt into the prescribed test program at the previous event was through the technical survey. So yeah, it was, I think, very successful. There was a report that was just recently published on the outcomes of this event, our first time doing it. And so how does that map over to our plans for the upcoming November 2024 event? We do want to give this another shot, do another prescribed testing program with a little bit of a different approach this time. Introducing the ChargeX challenge, we're calling it. And this is the gamified testing. To go through some of the details, it's similarly structured where there's 90-minute testing slot. This time we're taking an additional 10 minutes for testing slot, utilizing 7 testing slots of the 10. This time there will be more test scenarios, but testers will have the option to kind of choose which ones they would like to attempt. Each test scenario is listed to the right here with varying degrees of, let's say, difficulty or advanced testing. And each of these correlate to a point system. So there will be points for attempting the test. Some have more than others. For example, attempting a plug first using DIN 7121 may not have as many attempt points as shooting for plug and charged, expired, EV contract, fallback methods. Those are a bit more advanced. So there's points for attempting. There's EVSE pass criteria, multiple tiers. There's EV pass criteria, also with multiple tiers, and some additional stretch goals for additional points at the end. Some of these topics are start and stop methods, faults and MREX, plug and charge, seamless retry, etc. We're still going to have a moderator presence for each testing slot. CharIN has objects. Again, they're available on site to provide plug and charge certificates. Certificate pool will be available for testers. Similar $2,000 rebate, and the opt-in for this program was now started a little earlier. It was through the CharIN registration process. And I think that's most of the detail I have. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. And this is just some final things that to include here. And this is typically what the schedule may look like. Not fully confirmed this is exactly correct. This is mapped off of for the previous prescribed test program at the June event, moving it over to this November event, changing the dates a bit and the times. But as you can see, typically test slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We will have a hand having a 40-minute prescribed testing window and not having any prescribed testing on day 3 on the Thursday. That's entirely ad hoc dynamic testing. So what does that mean for the testers? During the day of, they will have we show up and deliver programs that will have all the test cases very detailed and defined, as you can see in the bottom right photo here. There's tabular data that goes over the test name, type, category, purpose, pre-test conditions, step-by-step procedures. Pass criteria now is going to be mapped over along with points as well. There's observed metrics, intended error codes, and recorded test results, etc. And as well, that'll be on the ChargeX moderators to be recording those results in tandem to the testers performing it. We'll also collect a little bit of metadata on the session as well as the hardware that was brought to Testival, some one-time metadata. And overall, looking forward to working with everyone, and we want to gather as much feedback and make this as seamless as possible to foster a fun, different approach to gamified testing to encourage interoperability. And I believe that's all I had. I did see a quick question in the chat, but I'm sure that I can answer that and pass it along.
It's to participate in the prescribed testing, do we have to intend to support -2 and -20 test cases? And can we sign up and perform a subset?
So there are some that would require -2, -20, but it's not a requirement to show up with -2, -20. Obviously, if testers are capable, that would increase the range of tests they can do. But I believe in total there are 5 of those test cases that require -2, -20. There's the DIN 7121 basic start, and then you dive into a couple stop methods, intentional stop methods, and those with errors. So there are definitely test cases that don't require them, and there's no problem signing up and being a part of the prescribed testing if you don't have those. It's just coordinating with the testers or your test pairing during that slot on which you want to attempt. So yeah, I don't think it's an issue if you only have -2, -20. And this is available as well for AC level 2 chargers. We've opened it up for them as well, not just DC. hopefully that answered the question well, Gabriel.
Are there any other questions for Sam? All right, thank you, Sam. Appreciate your help here. All right, so now that we've gotten through the prepared presentations, I wanted to turn it over to our past testers. So we want this to be as interactive as possible. We'll have Koen and Nicole both provide their perspectives on how they prepare for the testival, and then we'll open it up for folks to raise their hand or put questions into the chat box that Koen and Nicole can then answer. So it looks like Koen's on screen. I think I saw Nicole here a minute ago. So I will let you guys take it away.
Thank you, Erica. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I think Nicole, do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. So I am from BMW, and I will just give a little perspective on what we usually do before a CharIN Testival. So obviously, coming from a vehicle manufacturer, the biggest thing for us is getting our vehicles prepared beforehand. This includes several different things that we need to do. So we always make sure that we update the vehicle software, especially if there's new features that we want to test or new functions that are software based on our side. If we know ahead of time that we want to test plug-in charge, we make sure that we get all of the plug-in charge contracts downloaded, make sure that we have the right routes and the right PKIs. Thankfully, most of this is generated beforehand by Hubject, so all we need to do is get it into the car, which is fairly easy for us. Measurement equipment, we make sure that our cars have everything installed. We test the measurement equipment beforehand, and we check that, we can charge with DIN, we can charge with ISO. If we're doing plug-in charge, we check that the contract is at least working. We hope that it would fail because it should only be used at the testable, but at least, basic things like that. And then if we want to do any other tests, we'll make sure to pack the measurement equipment. As far as vehicle transportation is concerned, since it's a bit easier than transporting a charging station, I feel sometimes, we can drive the cars. So if we plan to drive ourselves to the testival, we'll plan out a route. Depends on how much time we want to spend driving. For instance, we were at the CharIN Testival in Portland in 2022, and we transported the vehicles there with a company. This had to be done at least a week beforehand so that the car could go from our location in New Jersey over to Portland, Oregon. Really depends on how far away the destination is, but to get the vehicles back, we drove. So there's some positives to transportation. We got to do a nice little cross country there. But so those are the things for vehicle transportation. And obviously, we want to make sure that we arrive at the test event with as low as an SSD as possible, since we plan on doing lots of testing and getting lots of charges in before we have to head back. So that's generally how we set up our cars. Maybe it's a bit different if you're a vehicle manufacturer, but I have a feeling that we're all more or less fairly similar when it comes to getting things prepped before attending the testival. I don't know if we want to take questions now or Kuang, if you want to go.
I guess let me jump in as well. Then I think we can take a question after. So following on Nicole, we for EVSC from ABB e-mobility, and we manufacture EVSC. So even though we can ship the equipment, it could be tricky because the last event that we had was preceding an event in Europe, so we actually didn't have the test device here. We actually have to ship it directly from Europe, and that was actually quite complicated. So I would recommend trying to ship early if you can. And then also the custom declaration is very important. We got stuck in custom because these are not production devices, right? So you kind of have to declare a little more, and the associated measurement equipment that goes with it as well, right? So that's a lot to declare. So make sure that you declare them all correctly, so that way you don't get hold up in custom. And then also make sure you track it too, right? Because last time we didn't quite track it until we got to the site, which was a big mistake because we didn't know that was held up in custom. So you do want to track it in real time if you can, because then that way you can work it out in the back end. And the other thing is, usually there's a setup day for the event. So I would recommend to have somebody come, a little bit early, so make sure that it get to the site, right? Because I think we didn't verify that. We show up and it didn't show up, so that wasn't good either. And one thing that is useful for the team is we do have a dedicated teams channel for the test event. So that way, quite a few of us are there, but there's also a support team at the back end as well. Yeah, so having a team channel is always good to communicate. And then for the equipment, it's fairly similar to what Nicole have described for the EV. We try to load stuff ahead of time, but if the thing is in transit, we can, right? So I think for the most part, we do use that full first day of setup, even some of the second day, to actually do things. So, verify firmware, download certificate, make sure that our connection is correct. And then, like what Sven mentioned, grid code is really important too, because we had an issue last time we shipped a device from the Netherlands, right? It had a European grid code. So, that you got to make sure that you switch it over in the firmware if you can, because sometimes you cannot switch it on the fly, right? Because that's a safety critical piece. So, that's something that you have to pay attention to. And then, but the other thing is to do verify your power requirement, like what Sven mentioned, the R require 5 plug, and we have a neutral, right, the 480. So make sure that that's provided at your site. Usually it's pretty good, but make sure you prefer that. And then part of the preparation there, you do want to try to perform any test session ahead of time if you can. So I think, yes, you test it ahead of time back, at the lab, but I think once you set it up there the day of, also do the test session there as well. So I think that's it for my preparation question.
Any questions? Folks are welcome to raise their hand or put questions into the chat box. I think some more logistics question, actually for me, how many people do you plan on taking with you to the testing event, and what are the different roles for those people for each of your companies? Nicole, do you want to start?
Sure. So usually we take 2 vehicles to the Testivals. We try to split it up between focusing on maybe one vehicle is just doing AC testing, the other vehicle is doing DC testing, or for doing DIN and ISO, or one car is just plug and charge. We kind of split it up like that. And with the 2 vehicles, as a rule, when we have 2 vehicles, then we will have 3 people on site for testing. One person will stay with each car, or one person is then with one of the cars at all times for recording measurements. The other person, the third person, is free to then decide which vehicle they would like to stay at. If there are other meetings or other topics that we need to cover, then we at least have a third person to go and take care of those things. But we usually, with our 2 vehicles, we're then a team of 3. If we brought more vehicles, we'd bring more people, but we generally try to keep it as a small affair for testing purposes.
Yep, for us, usually we test only one EVSC. We bring only one. So for us, in general, we have about 2 to 3 team member from the software team, because like what Sven mentioned, and then previously, these are all pretty much communication testing, right? So we do bring the software developer, and then one project manager to oversee, and that's the one that deal with logistic. So he'll handle everything there from the setup to everything else, and then one interop engineer, because even though yes, it's communication testing, the hardware do go along with it, right? So there is an interop engineer there as well. So normally it's about a team of 5 that we take.
And so just to dig in a little bit more, Kuhn, what are all 5 of those people doing during a testing slot, for example? Do they all have roles and responsibilities?
Right. Yep. Yeah. So I think, usually 2 of these software engineer are the one that run the test, and then they read the data log, right? So you got to have two people read the data log, and then one of the other one is our main scribe, which is you that document what we done and stuff like that into a report, and then so that is the person that capture any so you get the error from the two person that look at the data log, right? But then the third person, the one documenting it, and if anything that we need to address ahead of address during the event, then we send it back to the team back back home, so to speak. So I think that's kind of the role. And then if there's a dedicated person that kind of plug in and stuff like that, there's always have that person plug in, unplug, right? So you don't want to have the person looking at the data doing that too. So we kind of take turn doing that. And then one the project person is just kind of the observer and kind of help out as needed. So yeah, we do have a role to play. And then there definitely had to be a person running for coffee and stuff too. Coffee is very important. So there's definitely a coffee runner too.
What test devices do you both bring with you? In addition, obviously, to the equipment, what additional testing equipment are you bringing with you to document, for example, like you mentioned, Kuhn?
You want to go first, Nicole?
Sure, yeah. So additional measurement equipment that we'll bring, I mean, besides a PLC sniffer for the communication aspects of everything, we will bring a spectrum analyzer so we can check the attenuation of the charging cables. That's just something that we don't get to do all the time in the field, especially if they're new devices. And sometimes we'll run into problems, communication problems, if the attenuation of the charger isn't calibrated correctly. And then, of course, I mean, that's good that we can discuss that with the manufacturer. So if we are testing with ABB, we just let them know, and hopefully we don't run into issues when charging. But if we do, at least then we're there together and we can figure it out, what needs to be calibrated, if it's coming from our side, if it's coming from the charger. That's usually one piece of measurement equipment that we will bring with us. We also bring backup PLC sniffers. You never know if something's gonna break. Yeah, I mean, the rest of the measurement equipment is just built into our vehicles, so we have some extra things that we can pull all of the data from our vehicles and send that back to Munich, to our headquarters, if any issues arise.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually fairly similar, Erica. So we do have a scope, the snifter as well. That's the big important thing. But also pay attention to cable, right? You need a lot of Ethernet cable that are long. You also need you also need the power strip too, right? Because there's a lot of computer running, and you need power strip. And with long connection, right? We definitely don't want a daisy chain power strip, right? So make sure you have long power strip, and then just basic tool to electrical tool to actually wire things, right? Because you have to do some wiring there as well. So we have that, and then tester for voltage and current and stuff like that, just to make sure that when you do it safely. So I think those are the main thing that we bring, and computer, of course, right? Gotta have a lot of computer.
And are you
Don't
guys
forget about the
packing?
computers.
Yeah, I always see lots of laptops everywhere. Are you guys packing all these
Yes.
things in a luggage, like in your luggage, or are you shipping them in advance?
For the computer, I think usually the project manager is the one that bring them in the case. I mean, we each have our own computer, right? But then there's a dedicated, like one or two computer that only for testing that have, things preloaded, right? Because you have to have touch script and things like that preloaded on a computer. So that's just the one that, usually he take a Pelican case, right? With everything in it, the scope, the computer, and then the other sensitive equipment and the wires, right? So he goes with at least two big luggages.
Okay.
And we usually pack our cars full,
Yeah, right.
with all of the measurement equipment in addition to our own luggage. So, and since Kwong mentioned power strips, we also make sure that we bring backup battery packs so that we don't have to run power strips. We can just plug into the little battery in the back of our car.
Nice.
Just to
Maybe-
pivot a little, Sven, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
and
also
add some more.
maybe to underline this, I think what type of equipment, not only for testing, but also your type of equipment, it's a ready-to-market system. It's already on the market, or maybe also prototypes from EV and
so
also EVC.
Yeah, so the vehicles that we're bringing, they're always pre-production vehicles. They're not vehicles, they might be models that can be purchased already, but we're always testing new software, new firmware, new hardware in the vehicle. Maybe we've swapped some things. So the vehicles that we bring are configurations that are not readily purchased or not yet available for purchase. So that's then something that we always need to be very mindful of. It might be, if we have problems, that it could be related to any of those combinations of software or hardware that we're bringing. So.
Yeah, similar for us as well. I think even though we may bring, production unit, but the firmware and the software may be a different version. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to test the more developed version of those. So.
And I'm assuming you guys have a long list of things that you want to test as part of the event. How do you prioritize those things? Is it like a discussion within the team? Are you getting downward pressure from other parts of the organization? How do you prioritize?
I mean, for us, we always do more or less the same tests. We try to make it more or less, the same. If we were doing tests in the field versus at the CharIN Testival, we try to do different start-stop methods. If we're testing a new function or testing plug and charge, for instance, we'll make sure to then do multiple iterations of the same tests just to make sure things are working. And then once we're confident and happy with those, happy path results, then we'll start to throw in some maybe invalid certificates or emergency stop reasons or I mean, we discussed then as well, if the EVSE manufacturer, if they want to do anything special, that's what we're there for. And I mean, we generally do have our list of test cases, but it's nothing crazy. And especially a lot of the test cases that we do are now being taken over by ChargeX for the prescribed test plan. So that's at least good as well. Everything's listed somewhere.
Yeah, and for us, we do rely a lot on the vehicle, right? Because whatever vehicle can support, then we can actually support them. So, like for example, at the last festival, we have a -20 stack that we want to test, but that was hard to find in vehicle, so we only are able to actually test it with controller, which is fine, But I think the benefit of the testable is that, you kind of see where people are with their implementation, right? Like what's on the marketplace. And I think then that kind of tracking with our development too. So that's definitely a benefit. But yeah, we usually allow, we allow the vehicle manufacturer to tell us what they want to test, right? If they only have DIN, then we'll do DIN, right? If they have -2, we'll do -2. If they have -20, then we'll try -20. But we did run into a lot of problem with TLS. So TLS is definitely a spot that need more testing because that always been some issue around TLS for us. But the good thing is you can disable it, right? And then you can do it without TLS, but that kind of defeat the purpose a little bit. But yeah, that's a focus point. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So my last question before we move to the next section of the agenda is, how do you get the buy-in from your management and budget to do these kinds of testing events? What are the best arguments you found to justifying your participation?
I mean, for us, it's the best chance for us to actually test new vehicles, new software, new things coming into the market. We will not get any other opportunities other than at the festivals to test against so many different EVSEs, so many different configurations, maybe -20 if we're, have an early implementation and we want to see how things are working. This is for us the best way to be able to test everything. And that's usually justification alone for our management. And we always reserve money. We know that testivals are expensive, but we always reserve budget at the beginning of the year to participate in 2 testivals, bring 2 vehicles, 3 people, sometimes 4, and we make sure that the budget is there.
Yep, I think for us it's similar as well. But I think for we also like the testival because we gain visibility into where we are without implementation too. So that's a big benefit. And then when there is a conference, there's a lot of product management folks and even sales folks that show up to the testival as well. So I think that definitely have grown in participation, and I think that goes to the whole effort that CharIN had put in because now it's function at different benefit, right, to the participants. So that's great.
I love that.
Networking is also huge. So
Fantastic. Well, so now I wanted to shift gears to what happens after you leave the Testival. What do you do with all this information that you've gathered, and how are you leveraging that for your product? Nicole?
sure. So after the Testival, we obviously, if we ran into problems during testing, we hopefully solved those with the EVC manufacturer or while we were there on our own. But if there were any unresolved issues, things that we couldn't figure out on the vehicle side, we will send all of that data. We'll analyze it here on our own, but we'll also send most of it back to our colleagues in Munich. That is where our engineering hub is. So they will take a closer look at that as well. And maybe we found something in the software version that we're testing that the guys, the colleagues in Munich haven't found. So it's really good for us to then share the data and can build a better, more robust software for our customers when we do ultimately launch that software or vehicle. So it's very helpful for us. And as I said, we test a lot of pre-production vehicles and software. So these are all things that there's still time to make changes and make the best product that we can.
Yep. So fairly similar to what Nicole did. We do trying to test. We do trying to fix thing on the field in the field if we can, right? So some software thing we can fix there, but the hard one is if there's firmware issue. Those things have usually we have to take back. Our main R&D hub is in the Netherlands, so we do send it back there. And then like the team channel that I mentioned, we do keep the file there too, so the PCAP file goes there, so we can actually have all the team has access to them as well. Including the team back at the R&D office. So those are very helpful. I mean, one thing that we found is that we do document. So even though yes, here we have multiple pairing, right? But we can flag like a certain issue with a manufacturer that we can investigate further. Like for instance, if there's something not working with BMW, we can then when we go back, we can go approach Nicole and say, yeah, this is not working. Like what can we fix or whatnot? So I think that's the benefit too. So like once the testival done, then we can trace all of the many issue that we have specifically with the manufacturer. So that way we know ahead of time, like, okay, this is a known cause, right? A known issue. So I think that's very helpful too. Then that's improved interoperability. Not that you can talk about one-on-one interoperability, one manufacturer to and then the manufacturer. So that's also important too. And then the other thing, usually, even though on the vehicle side, you can capture your own PCAP file, but, we have our own. So I think sometime when we do go back, if there's something that, not quite right, we do share PCAP file with the other tester
I was
as
just
well.
about to say that as
Yeah.
well. We
Yeah,
do
right.
share our PCAP files. We try not to keep anything secret. So the testing is beneficial for both of us, and we want to make sure that we share data then between companies.
Yeah, one-on-one. So that way, we protect ourselves, but at least, it's
Yeah.
a bi-directional thing, right? Not sharing broadly, but we do, share one-on-one. Yeah.
Great. Anything else that you guys do following the event?
Plan for the next one.
Plan for the next one. Yeah. Yeah. If we're driving, drive back home. So I mean, when we drove back from Portland, that was quite let me see, over 3,000 miles of driving. So
Wow. Yeah,
it's
that's
not
a
like
long
these are very close locations
Yeah.
sometimes, but gives us more opportunities for testing and
So
more
you
things to analyze.
You do end up testing along the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
So talking about the feedback loop that Sven was mentioning before, do you ever share the data that you're collecting from these events with standards bodies or other groups that are helping to improve the standard?
Not the exact data, but if there's problems or if we see that there are issues with how the standards are written, or we think that there needs to be maybe a change in a timeout or more robustness, things added into the standard, then we'll definitely bring those up. BMW is a participant in SAE, IEC, ISO, DIN, ChargeX consortium. I mean, we're everywhere, and I know ABV is too. And from that standpoint, we do try to bring things back into the standards bodies if we feel that they yeah, there's a problem or things could be better. But it's not that we're going to send PCAPs to ISO for them to look at, but we'll indirectly then add those things into the standards if possible.
Yeah. And I think that's very useful because our standard is always up for interpretation, right? So until we actually see how people interpret it, we could improve the requirement, right, based on interpretation, because you don't want to have multiple interpretation, right? That's where you have interoperability issue. I think the other one we bring back also is the CharIN Interoperability group that working on CCS and CS extended, yeah, because I think a lot of time things may not be like standard specific, right? But they're performant, that kind of thing. So then, there's a CharIN provide another place for us to actually deal with that as well. So it's very good to have that coordination.
Excellent. Well, we have a few minutes left. Does anybody online have any questions for Nicole or Koen before we conclude? Okay, yes, I see a question from Dante.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you guys so much for giving some of your experience here. I think it'll really help us in part of our planning. Specifically for our team, we're focused on a lot of the future feature planning within our group. And we were thinking for this event, we might come as an observer for like one or two of our members. And I know most of this is, along the lines of the prescribed test plan and whatnot, but do you see benefit in a, 1-day participation for some of the observer activities? Curious to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, I personally think it's really great, especially if you're not at the point where you have something for testing. It's, for me, honestly, one of the best ways to see standards and implementation, to actually see things, how they're moving and how things are working. So even if you're just there as an observer, you can ask questions, you can watch and see, is Dash 20 working? Are we doing plug and charge? Which vehicles have NACs already implemented? Which charging stations? I mean, there's also all sorts of things, especially just networking, just being able to talk to the people that are there. It makes one day more than enough, I think, for some of those things.
Yep. But piggyback on Nicole. So we it's definitely a lot of value because it's almost like standard in motion, right? Standard in implementation. Then it's also a snapshot in time of where the field is with implementation, right? Because I think that's very like if you are planning product feature, right? You can see what the competitors are doing, how the marketplace are progressing and things like that. So I think it's very useful. And then when you come to our booth or our testing event, we're always going to talk to you, right? Not like we hide anything, right? We will tell you like where we are with implementation. Like last time we had Dash 20 implemented, we got a lot of question on how it was. I mean, it was quite painful to implement Dash 20, but and then I mean there are amendment in the works, right? So the good thing about working in standard, you're never done, right? Job security. So things always evolve.
It's always
so it's always that, right?
And to answer your question also, Dante, we are going to be having a public day Wednesday, November 20th at our next Testival here in North America, which will be hosted at WAD-EV in San Bernardino, California. So we'd invite you and anyone else from your team to participate at that day. We'll have a formal agenda and a program, a tour with different interoperability testing activities and demonstrations. So that's a great opportunity for anyone here who is interested in learning more. We highly encourage you to come to our Testival, which is November 18th through the 21st. And then the testing, and like I said, the public day, which is a much reduced price, is the 20th. So with that, we are at the end of our webinar. I want to thank everyone who spoke at the event today, and we appreciate all of you who participated, and we hope you will be more engaged in CharIN Testivals in the future. And thank you, everybody, for your time and attention. Anything else, Jeremy, Nicole, Koen, Sven, you'd like to say before we close out?
Oh, maybe see you next time on the Testival.
Great, there you go.
Yes.
Yep, see you there.
See you in November.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.